So without any further delay, let's start with our next fireside chat, which is titled, Is Personalization the Answer? In this session, panelists will talk about how the brands will invest in technology and data to drive the personalized conversations.
I know, I think ours is the third last and we have 2 more sessions to go. But in between that, we're talking about personalization. Um, how many of you actually think that brands talk to you in a personalized manner? Or has a brand in India spoken to you, addressed to you in a personalized manner? I haven't seen. If you have, we will be ready to take some case studies here. But the first question is, do we actually personalize message as a brand in India? Has it reached somewhere? If not, why? Or is personalization all about upselling or overselling, as Supratik had told us right now? So, Ritu?
I think what has started, in my opinion, is personalization at scale. And not necessarily an individual to individual personalization. Of course, the extent of this scale or the extent of personalization would vary from category to category and from industry to industry. So on a very mass scale business like FMCG versus real estate, the extent of personalization could be different. But it's personalization at scale, and I don't think it is overselling. To me, personalization is about creating greater relevance. Personalization is about being able to identify beyond demographics, to be able to identify purchase patterns, behaviors, and hence create content, products, services, solutions, which are more relevant to that particular audience and be able to offer that. So if we talk specifically content, then that content becomes more relevant to that audience, more relatable, and hence they choose or not choose to act on it. And personalization is a way hence to make advertising less of an irritant and more of an enabler for the audience.
So, Pratik, we were discussing about customization versus personalization. So, the question is India at a stage where you're customizing or you're personalizing, and we are mistaking customization for personalization?
Okay, thanks, Anushree, for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be here. And see, I think the customization is a kind of hygiene factor for a lot of areas. Like we are discussing about food, and if you are opening a food business in India, I'll take the case of McDonald's. An aloo tikki burger is a customization in the context of Indian palate. And obviously that is not personalization. But if you don't do that customization, then you are actually not being able to penetrate the market. So customization, I think, roots from more the large-scale consumer understanding, large-scale market dynamics understanding. But when you convert that understanding into individual level, I think that is where the personalization kicks in. But what we are discussing earlier also, in my mind, and it's purely my view, is that in the name of personalization, what we are doing is we are not understanding what is personalization. As a marketeer, we are taking personalization as a tool to communicate. But I think it's other way around. For a consumer, personalization means it's a tool for her to choose better, to choose smarter, and to choose and save time and money in the process. So I'll just give an example. Like if I'm getting a kind of undue WhatsApp message for something, if I bought something in a particular store and then the store keeps on sending me basis my last purchase something, that is not a personalization. That is also, it's a kind of basically a marketing effort to either sell more or sell better. But when I'm going to a particular, I'll give an example of, say, OTT. When I'm going to a Netflix or a Prime and I'm trying to select what to watch. And in that point, or even for YouTube, at that juncture, when the algorithm is suggesting me what I should or I can watch, that in a way saving my time. So that's, I think, is the moot point of personalization. We miss the personalization as a communication technique, but the personalization is about helping the consumer to choose better.
In fintech or in finance is one sector where personalization is believed to play a very big role. Can you share some use cases where we can understand how it is being used?
No, Anushree, thanks. Absolutely. I think, this is very critical, right? Especially in the financial services space, the fintech payment space. Another reason why personalization is absolutely key is because of the trust factor, right? And that's prime, right? So today, when any particular brand, payments app is communicating to their merchant or their customer, it's very important to understand the context with which that communication is going out. And, this is something, Anushree, we are discussing that, personalization, a decade back, brands personalizing names, having the last product that they've bought, all of that is part of a very rudimentary personalization templated library now, right? Can I understand this customer better, right? Can I understand the kind of needs and wants and preferences that this customer has? I think customers are demanding this today. Customers do gravitate towards brands who personalize communication better, but they further gravitate even more to brands who deliver personalization with enough context. So, talking about use cases, we are into the space of, UPI payments, and we enable acquirers to do that with their base of merchant ecosystems. And in the last 2 quarters, we've done over 300 million connects across various communication channels with different segments of merchants. And there are 2 things that we've learned. One is, don't communicate run-of-the-mill things. Merchants do understand, customers do understand basic communication on the app, right? So the moment you've onboarded a customer on a mobile app, the most typical thing, hey, welcome to so-and-so app. Next day onward, you'll start getting a series of communication, right? But throughout the entire life cycle journey, are we able to deliver enough value to the customer is one question which we need to always keep asking. Can I deliver communication at the right time to that customer? And hence the context builds in, right? So, we work with, acquirers, and their merchants are across industries, right? So whether it's restaurant and food, it is, say, fruit and vegetable vendors, larger, say, retail stores, electronic stores. One of the things we are working towards very closely with them is, can I communicate very differently to merchants situated in different pin codes of the country, in different states of the country? Because the cultural nuances are different. The way they process things on a payments app is very different. And, then they're able to build engagement, right? So in the fintech space, of course, millions of merchants that are there by the likes of, the larger fintechs that we know in the country, but the banks are looking at this slightly more differently. They are engaging far more, and in my opinion, far better with their merchant ecosystem because of personalized communication. And because of that, they are able to drive a lot more higher throughput through their payment apps. So they might not have the volume in terms of merchants, but hey, you look at, the business float that they're getting from these merchants is far higher. And the reason for that is personalization. So I think, but like you said, I think in the financial services space, personalization is absolutely key. And that's because trust is the epitome in this.
Ritu, can you give us some example of personalization in the category that you work in?
Sure. So, in the space of self-care, or let's take nutrition in particular, there is increasingly more and more data available thanks to all the different health tracking apps and devices that we use today, of what every individual's food intake, physical activity routine, etc. looks like. There is a large amount of data available on health parameters, etc. And this data has an ability to help us work towards personalized nutrition. So a lot of times when we talk about nutrition, the question is that, do I need this? Do I need the supplement because I eat XYZ and I take care of my diet? A lot of personalized nutrition products and solutions can be created by using the data that is available with respect to the food intake, with respect to the history, the individual profiles that are available. Are we there yet? Not probably. It has started. So Bayer globally is working a lot in this space, and there are early inroads, I would say, that are being made. And which is why I talked about personalization at scale, because I think that's the first step. And then over a period of time, you want to really get to personalization at an individual level. But that's a huge space in nutrition where the desire would be to get to a personalized one-to-one nutrition solution.
To a certain extent, a lot of D2Cs have come into the space.
Yes.
So as a third party, what has been your observation? Have they been able to make a crack in that space?
So again, I think there are like you would see a lot, not just the tablet space in nutrition, but there are a lot of hair products of late that you would see, right? Which would essentially ask you to fill a certain questionnaire, and then say that we will give you a product for your hair that you need, your kind of problems. So there are a lot of D2C brands, businesses that have started working in this space. Their consumer bases are still at a small level. The real challenge that we will see and how they bridge that gap will be as they scale these business models. How do you keep catering to the larger set of audiences with those personalized products, and or are there patterns that they are able to identify and hence form certain kind of cohorts which they will be able to then serve with a certain kind of product. So that is something we will need to watch as these businesses scale.
I like your story of biscuits a lot, and it showed that how data can be horribly wrongly read, and how should you not rather personalize based on mere purchase pattern? In that case, how does it work for brands? Because we were talking about this, that there's a Black Friday sale, and I think I've got at least 10 messages since morning from all brands without understanding that I may not be interested to buy during this time.
True. I think, see, as we started with that, the difference between personalization as a tool to communicate versus a personalization as a tool to help consumer to choose better. And most of us has the misconception and a kind of tendency to use it as a tool to communicate. See, I think, interestingly, if you see the tech-driven personalization, which we all are talking about, which is a hot topic now, but I see a kind of dichotomy or a contradiction in that, because personalization, as a name suggests, is about involving a person in that process. Okay, the moment you make it a tech-driven, then you are losing out that individual or that person. See, any personalization or anything which is basically the last mile micro level marketing, it needs a database or a data point to start with, and the first data point is your name. Okay. Now, pre-digital era, even if it is a templated message or a printed mail, if somebody has written the name on it, like, you know that somebody has taken the trouble to find out your name, your address, and then written it on there, maybe typewritten or handwritten. There is an individual effort has gone into that. But today what is happening, an AI algorithm is dragging your name from the email ID and then putting it there. And there is no person. So even if you see a personalized communication, you know that it is very impersonal. Because what's happening that the technology is taking over the personalization. It is actually in the process making it very impersonal. Because now anybody can apply it. So that's a dichotomy I see. And I'm not going into that biscuit story, because I think Ritu was one of those conclave where she also had heard that story. But the point is that we are very clear about who is buying, what is buying, when is buying. But we are not clear about why an individual is buying. And I think technology needs a long run to understand it. It will take maybe another 5 years to understand why it is buying. Because one has to humanize the data. If the data is just a data, so a data point talking to another data point and creating another set of data point, then I think that's not personalization. That's more about analytics, that's more about creating segments. And also the last thing which I would like to add is that not every brand would need that kind of hyper personalization. Like if you are a mass brand like a toothpaste or a soap, you may not need that. But on the other hand, if you are a Harley Davidson, then also you don't need personalization because that brand itself has a character. Those who are attracted by that characteristics of the brand will come to that brand. You don't need to personalize that brand. If you personalize the Harley Davidson, the brand is dead. So that's where it is basically. One has to understand it's. So the topic is that does it matter? Is the answer? Yes, it is obviously one of the answers, not the answer. And one has to deploy this as with a judicious mind to understand what is intrusion, what is customization, what is personalization.
Just wanted to add on this point, and Anushree, picking up from where you also left off on, getting, almost a dozen messages on Black Friday sales, right? And when you were mentioning a brand, you mentioned a brand like Body Shop, and, all of us are getting, these messages from some of the best e-com businesses in the country. Now, I think we had a very interesting use case a couple of months back. We, as I was sharing, we work with, a few million merchants across the country. Now, while brands like an Amazon, a Zepto, or the likes of a Body Shop have, we would assume have the best data models all in a structured database and should have the best capabilities to run marketing campaigns. But, in many cases, we do see that, okay, hey, this is not a great example of a personalized communication. So, when we were working with merchants, so one of the value-added services on a lot of payment apps that you generally see is the ability for, let's say, a merchant, so your, closed-door kirana wala, to create a personalized offer for their customers. Somewhere I do feel that today, my nearby kirana wala probably does better personalization than, the Zeptos of the world. And that's perhaps because he's got such a great hold on the kind of audience in his or her nearby locality and is able to communicate this, but not communicate this at scale. And we start getting a lot of feedback from merchants who said that, hey, you know what, you guys have given us these great templates to create offers and, put, let's say, an XYZ percentage off, and put some product pictures and send it out. But, when topicals like a Black Friday comes, when we've got, we see Amazons of the world running a great Indian festival and so is the Flipkarts of the world, where do we as Kirana Walas get an opportunity to run a campaign like this? And then we started thinking, saying, hey, you know what? I mean, what if every Kirana Wala store were to get an opportunity to create these personalized festive offers on their very payment apps, which, are primarily meant to accept payments, but they can definitely do a lot more. Can we deliver that? And it's amazing to see, when we were looking at the kind of festive data, when we were wrapping up, what Diwali numbers were looking like, we're almost seeing a 400 to 450% increase in the uptake of offers being delivered to the merchant's customer. And that's great to see because, merchants are seeing value that, okay, hey, this is an important piece of communication to be delivered. The second reason why this becomes very important is because I think we operate in a very low loyalty environment of customers, right? The next best offer, the next best product, and the customer has switched. And therefore, I think there is a lot more reliance on not just a lot of the big brands sitting in the room here, but like I was giving an example for even my nearby Kirana Wala to make sure that he's able to personalize communication. So I think, absolutely spot on. I think there is a long way for us to go. Of course, there are many challenges around personalization, which I'm sure we'll take up. But yeah, that's just the two bits I wanted to add.
I'll take what Khushaal is saying. See, there are two aspects of the personalization. One is the data set. A good personalization algorithm or anything which you need a good data set too. And I think BFSIs are doing great job on that. They have a very robust data set. The second part is your ability, whatever you are offering, it could be a service, it could be a product, your ability to personalize in the sense of that the product or the service has to have the flexibility. Now, in case of that hair care example, you answer 5 different questions, okay, like what kind of hair, fizzy, oily and all. But at the end of the day, you get the same product, okay. So you get a pseudo sense of personalization that, okay, you feel good that, okay, somebody is asking you 5 questions and giving you a hair product. and you check out your friend, basically at the back end probably there are 2 or 3 variants, and a kind of permutation combination is giving you 6 different or 9 different options. Okay, so that is one thing. But I think also at what point you should personalize, that is also critical. So it is not always you need to have a personalization at the product or service level also. As Khushaal had said, that your corner kirana or grocer store is probably doing more personalization than a multinational chain. And how he is doing personalization, he is not doing that personalization at a product level. He is doing that personalization at the service providing level, like how he is packaging it. He knows that at what size probably you take your rice or your other grains or other things. He understands that, okay, what is basically your, so he is packing it like that. He is probably sending it in a certain format or a certain way. So the personalization is not, so far I was telling that, okay, there are what is not personalization, but what I'm also saying that personalization is also beyond the product. You can personalize the process. So there is a great opportunity when we miss at a product level personalization. Like not every product can be personalized, okay, which are mass scale product, which are FMCG product. But at a service level, at a delivery level, you can personalize. I think that what we need to understand, that, okay, personalization is entire value chain, not just the product end.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think we have to think of personalization at all the points in the value chain. It is not only at the product level or not only at the communication level. It can be at service, it can be in offers, it can be in anything. Like we were talking about the kirana wala or the retail, right? Personalization is also when if somebody is walking by nearby my store and the ability to really identify that, okay, this person is near the location and I want to tap in and close. The ability of that kirana wala to offer a slightly higher discount or a different service, or you just come in and choose and I'll deliver it to your home. That level of personalization in that moment is also personalization. So it's not just about only product, only content or process. It's the entire value chain. Which point in time are you able to personalize? That moment in itself can be the advantage. Determining that moment in itself can be an advantage for a business too. At the end of the day, it is about selling more because it is about the business. And that is what the brands are trying to leverage. But I think the key here is that, is it helping the consumer in some way while helping the business as well? And then there will be value in it for both ends. And then there will be an appreciation in the consumer also that, okay, there's certain information of mine that you leverage to deliver this to me, but you delivered some value to me. And hence I appreciate, and I don't consider that as an intrusion, because there is a use of data that the brands will need to do, that the businesses will need to do. But is the use of consumer data leading to value for the consumer also? That is very important. And then it will be a win-win and not be considered intrusion, but leveraging the data for something that truly delivers value for the consumer.
Okay, the last question is challenges of personalization. What are the challenges of personalization? Khushaal, we'll start with you and then.
I think enormous, right? And I think which is perhaps the reasons why I think all of us pretty much on the dais are talking about how brands can do a lot more, right? I think the challenges are real, right? Whether it is having data in multiple databases, multiple tables, and the ability to aggregate all of that and therefore personalize the right content to the right customer is very difficult, right? Today, I think, in my opinion, one of the things where I think we as marketers need to improve a lot more is to work a lot more closely with the data analytics and the data insights and the tech teams. I think somewhere, we're so driven about, hey, is my brand positioned correctly and is my communication right? Which is great, which it needs to be. And, there needs to be that North Star that we keep going towards in terms of our brand positioning. But I think somewhere, are we creating the right segments and the right attribute models to be able to target is something where I think we as marketers don't do enough. So I think definitely a lot of that cross-team collaboration is definitely required, which I I think in a lot of large organizations is a little more difficult. So that's definitely one challenge. And the second one, like I said, is more to do with data tables and the algorithms at play, because what that limits is really personalization at scale, right? And I think Ritu started off with that, right? Saying that, if you really need to achieve a lot more, and we all agree that, why are we doing a lot of this personalization, right? We're doing that to drive loyalty. We're doing that to drive engagement. Why are we doing that? To drive, let's say, bottom line and conversion numbers. Now, if we aren't able to do that at scale, I think it's been a common topic throughout the day, right? How do we justify ROI to CFOs in the room here? So absolutely, I think these are some of the challenges that I see from a lens where we operate.
Ritu?
Yeah, I think from the biggest challenge that I see with personalization is how do you really balance the data part of it, the data privacy part of it, and the extent of personalization, because both are important. And I think it's the balance in the two that is critical for any business to achieve. Because in the spirit of personalization, you may want to go to the real depth on gaining on the information about that individual, but that then becomes intrusion. It pretty much becomes spooky that, I just uttered this word, and why is this app now stalking me pretty much all over the internet with its products? So you don't want to be that spooky brand as well. And hence the balance between data privacy and personalization is, I think, the biggest challenge that a brand needs to find.
Data privacy, huh? We have an act now. How much is that going to be a deterrent?
See, the first party data or the zero party data and all those things are happening. And I think I would echo what Ritu is saying, is that, see, the personalization should strike a balance between individual privacy and the personalization. That it should not cross that line of privacy, though even if you have the data, how you should be prudent to use that data. But there is one more challenge, which in my mind is that how do you measure the success of a personalization as a process? What is the right measure? What is the success measure? See, at one side, you can measure it by the revenue upside, because ultimately, at the end of the day, any initiative, any technique, and a classic Michael Portal style, I would say that it should give you a strategic advantage or a competitive advantage, and that advantage can then translate into a revenue increase. So, what is the right measure of personalization? Is it that only revenue increase? Then you will keep on getting that Black Friday kind of push. Or on the other side, is it that, okay, what kind of engagement I am creating? But then that side also has the clickbait kind of things which will start happening. So one, as a fraternity, probably I would leave with the thought that we need to find what is the right measure of personalization and how much you would do the personalization without being intrusive and creating a compromise on the data privacy.
So I think some of the key takeaways are that not all categories require personalization. So there should not be a race for personalization. One of the other thing is to humanize data. And the other thing is to between being intrusive and being communicative. That are the three lines that essentially I can see the three key messages that I can see coming out. We may have time to take one or two questions. If somebody has a question, please raise your hand and just limit it to a question, please, not a statement. Is there anyone who has a question?
The question is very simple. The last explanation which you sought with the speakers is that, the challenges of personalization. Say personalization is what? The product personalization. So does this issue needs to do the SWOT analysis before we launch into doing the person?
So you're saying before I launch a product, do I take a market feedback? Do I map it? That happens, right?
Giants are sitting, Bayer as well as the Lupin, because their products, not just in India, but internationally, so deep into this thing, and also they are categorically aiming at a particular thing, whether it is HIV/AIDS from Cipla, whether it is Lupin, doing TB, and Bayer is doing nutrient, even including micronutrient, which Ritu probably missed it.
So your question is that do we do a SWOT analysis before that, right? Yeah, I think SWOT analysis is one of the very early steps that you would do on any product brand launch that you work on, or even on a going basis. That's something that brands would understand what's happening in the market, what are my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. That's a very essential part of any brand's understanding what's working for it today, what are the opportunities for tomorrow. I think what is happening today is a step further to that, to try and do this SWOT analysis for a further few segments sometimes. Like I'll give you an example on nutrition. When we look at nutrition as a category, the kind of competition that is there in general trade versus in the online or e-commerce can be very different, because there are very different kind of brands that are selling. So an additional step that the brand may need to do is to first do the SWOT analysis overall, but there may be a separate SWOT analysis that the brand needs to do for e-commerce specifically, or even for that purpose for just Amazon as a marketplace separately. And that's the more fine-tooth comb at different channels, different consumer segments. Sometimes India is too vast to consider as one for this analysis, and you want to do for a specific market. You may want to do this specifically for a consumer segment, like I want to consider prenatal nutrition separately or kids nutrition separately, and then do the SWOT analysis for a brand. So it's an essential step in any brand building process. What personalization, or if we call it segment marketing better for versus individual personalization, more like thinking of segments or cohorts, then it demands a SWOT analysis for finer set of audiences also.
So for the rest of the question, please catch your speakers offline. Time's up. Thank you so much.